This is The Fifth Estate, a conversation between young African scholars from the Fort Hall School of Government and Professor Muthama. This Sunday, we will submit that there is sabotage in NASA, and the squad leader in the sabotage is Kalonzo Musyoka. In our view, Kalonzo accepted the NASA position with bitterness, and he accepted it because he had a plan B. Let me explain using a grandmother story. Once upon a time, there was a great famine. There was no hunger, no hope, just hunger. In this desperation, the hyena and the hare held a conference, and they decided that to survive, they both had to eat their mothers. It was agreed that the hyena's mother should be eaten first, and the hare's mother last. And so the hyena rushed home, hugged and kissed his lovely mother, and then strangled her. The hyena and the hare enjoyed the meat for a week. Then Monday came, and it was the hare's turn to kill his mother, so that they could eat her for that week. To the hyena's surprise, the hare and his mother could not be found. They had disappeared after cheating the hyena.
Now we must pose a question to country. Fellow countrymen, who ate his mother in NASA? Was it Raila or was it Kalonzo? Who is the NASA hyena and who is the NASA hare? Did Raila eat his mother or did Kalonzo eat his mother? Put differently, who was tricked in the NASA selection of candidate? At face value, Kalonzo was tricked into eating his mother. He is the NASA hyena. But in reality, Raila is probably the one who ate his mother. Let me explain. If Raila boycotts the election in order to force a caretaker government, violence will be the midwife of the caretaker government. Such a government will happen because we want to end violence. And our reference point is 2007. However, we have not paid attention to how the violence will end. And in our view, Kalonzo will declare Raila a warmonger and abandon him. Then Mudavadi and Wetangula will follow. They will join government without Raila. Raila will be left standing alone as a warmonger. This is how the original Kanu boys will fix him once and for all.
But there's another reason why Raila is the one who ate his mother. He's the one who got tricked by NASA. Do you recall Uhuru saying that Raila is the one who fixed them at the ICC? And do you recall Ruto saying this week that Raila is conspiring to revive the ICC cases if he wins? This is not empty talk. These are signals to Raila. And the message is simple. Raila fixed Uhuru and Ruto at the ICC. It is now their turn to fix him, and they will. That is why Kenya has not left ICC yet. But that is not all. If the election degenerates into NASA violence, Kalonzo and Mudavadi will denounce the violence. Then they will tell us that Raila is a warmonger, and they will produce the NASA evidence to support this. This is how Raila will be sent to ICC with solid evidence as Kalonzo and Mudavadi join government happily.
In the meantime, we must return to the NASA sabotage, but we must illustrate this using yet another story. Once upon a time, there was an arrogant king with two defects. He had one bad eye and one broken leg. Because he loved himself so much, he wanted a picture of his handsome posture painted by a professional. And so he called all the professional painters in the land to paint his picture. All the painters declined. They knew if they painted him with one eye and a broken leg, he would chop off their heads. But one young painter said he would do it and risk his life. He painted the king aiming at a rabbit in the forest. One of his eyes was closed and his knee was bent. This way, the young painter covered the defects of the king. He covered his one eye by making it appear as though he were aiming, and covered his defective leg, making him appear like he was kneeling to aim. Is Raila the king with the defects? And is Kalonzo painting the wrong picture to deceive him?
If indeed there is sabotage in NASA, what is being sabotaged and why? In our view, Kalonzo wants to sabotage the coming violence. He knows that if NASA loses the election, Violence will be their only means to government. It worked in 2007, it will work in this election. If Kalonzo is the sabotage engineer in NASA, therefore, it is for two reasons. One, he's sensing the coming violence and he is repulsed by it. Two, he's asking himself the question, if NASA gets into government through violence, what will he get in the coalition or caretaker government? And the answer is not worth the violence. To support violence in order to become Deputy Prime Minister under Raila in the coalition is sheer nonsense. This is why Kalonzo has become a sabotage engineer in NASA. Because he's not sure that he will become Deputy President in NASA, he's open to sabotaging Raila in order to become Prime Minister in a Jubilee coalition. This is why Nyenze and Musial are acting very funny.
Raila has only two options in my view. Number one, to become president, and number two, to force a grand coalition government. And his best bet is a coalition government. And for this to happen, he has to precipitate a crisis. He must do what he did in 2007. But he has two problems in executing this scheme, in my view. One, if Kalonzo supports the violence, what does he get out of it? The position of a deputy prime minister under Uhuru, Ruto and Raila? Is this worth the violence for Kalonzo? As a diplomat, Kalonzo would disagree with this path, in my view. So that is out of the question. Number two, for Raila to force a coalition government through violence, Kalonzo and Mudavadi must stand by him. And if one of them abandons Raila, the violence will die away before a coalition is achieved. And Raila will then be depicted as a warmonger. And this is how ICC will kick in. In my view, this is how Raila will be isolated and Kalonzo becomes prime minister to stop the violence. In sum, a coalition government can happen without Raila. In fact, it can be used to isolate Raila. And that is the Kalonzo scheme.
Now, we will make two final submissions. One, we will submit that the Chebukati IEBC was created by Raila. If Raila had not staged violent mass action, resulting in a number of deaths, the Chebukati IEBC would not have been born. Chebukati and Chiloba are therefore creations of Raila. In fact, Raila is a political father by nature, and for Raila to sire them and then humiliate them as incompetents is to be downright cruel. Let me break this down. Raila did not want changes in IEBC. In fact, the people who died in the Raila riots of IEBC died in vain. Spilling their blood was just a sport. And we say so because the Hassan IEBC was just fine. In fact, the country was more comfortable with the Hassan Commission compared to this Chebukati thing. In sum, Raila wanted IEBC changed in order to cause confusion. But given a chance, the Chebukati IEBC might just surprise us.
Our second and final submission regards President Uhuru Kenyatta. He should not defend IEBC. In fact, he should occasionally abuse them the way Raila does it. And this is because he does not know these fellows. If Chebukati was an ODM candidate at some point, when did this ODM-ness disappear? When did he become neutral? Was it the day they appointed him IEBC chair? The Russians taught us one critical principle of political competition. They taught us to trust, but verify. Uhuru must not trust Chebukati and his wailing sisters. He must trust, but verify. Similarly, Uhuru must entertain the thought that Chebukati and Raila talk regularly. In fact, he should entertain the thought that the two are executing a scheme. If Raila is attacking IEBC, therefore, the attacks are just a decoy. Raila is doing this to divert attention from a scheme he is executing with Chebukati. Although this hypothetical position is far-fetched, Uhuru must follow the Russian rule before defending IEBC too much. He must trust but verify.